Responsibility to yourself means refusing to let others do your thinking, talking, and naming for you. It means learning to respect and use your own brains and instincts, hence grappling with hard work. Adrienne Rich, Claiming an Education, 1977. Hello, my name is Katie Parker, and this podcast is all about my own thoughts and analysis of critical literacy and its use in the classroom. The day is June 1st, 2013, and I am recording this podcast from my apartment in the heart of Uptown Charlotte. I am finishing out my third year of teaching in Eastway Middle School. I started my career as a Teach for America Corps member, and next year I will be opening the first of 6 charter schools across the state called Invest Collegiate. I chose the quote I began this podcast with because I believe it illustrates the true purpose behind the theory of critical literacy: personal responsibility. As human beings and citizens of the world, we each have a responsibility to the good of mankind to access information, critically analyze that information, and question the rules, standards, and people that run our society. As teachers, we have a responsibility to our students to teach them how to read, think, and question the world around them. One major facet of critical literacy is promoting positive social change. According to Wendy Morgan's Critical Literacy in the Classroom, critical literacy experts seek to promote the conditions for a different textual practice and therefore different political relations than present social, economic, and political inequalities, as these are generated and preserved through literacy practices within and beyond formal education. The medium for this practice is language. Teaching students to be comfortable with interacting, using, and communicating with language is crucial to their success in analyzing literacy. On a personal level, critical literacy has been the driving tenet of my own education. Back in high school, my fellow nerds and I in the International Baccalaureate program at our school would walk around saying, "I think, therefore I be." I know the phrase has its roots in philosophy, but what I didn't realize was that it exemplified all that I was doing in reading and thinking critically about text. Going through that program and using philosophy daily, I grew and began to be able to question not only my own beliefs, but those of the world around me, through the text that we read. To this day, I found myself not being able to read a text, be it an article in Cosmopolitan magazine or an email from an associate, without thinking critically on a deeper level with every word. Although it annoys my husband at times, I'm so thankful for my own teachers for instilling that in me, and I hope to become the type of teacher to do so for my own students. In doing some reflecting on my own use of critical literacy in my classroom thus far, I've come to realize that some of the most real moments I've ever had with my students have involved some of the features of those reflected in critical literacy. Unfortunately, there have not been many, but the few times there were, I was actually able to see my students thinking and realizing some important truths about life. For example, I teach in a Title I low-income minority school in Charlotte, and I wanted my students to realize that if they wanted to be successful in life, they were going to have to fight for it tooth and nail. We explored Jonathan Kozol's text, Still Separate, Still Unequal, America's Educational Apartheid, and it was an eye-opening experience. Kozol argues that many of our nation's schools, especially those in urban areas, are still deeply segregated, with minority schools still very much not in the league of the white schools. In addition to the article, I asked my students one simple question. Look around the room. Where are the white, rich kids? I cannot describe the looks on my 8th graders' faces that day. Anger, shock, frustration. I had them relay those feelings on a poster board, and the reactions were heartbreaking. Through a critical explanation of the text and a little bit of eye-opening, I had a lot of light bulbs click on that day, and I was then able to use those feelings and thoughts and turn them into 80 determined, college-bound souls. Despite my joy after our still separate, still unequal conversation, I haven't been able to replicate similar experiences in my classroom. However, after doing some research, I found 2 concrete ways to start creating a culture of critical literacy in the classroom for my students next year. The first strategy I found through multiple sources is getting students to ponder power and interest through a text. For example, getting students to think about who is gaining what through a text, through questions like, in whose interest is the text? Who benefits from the text? Is the text fair? Whose views are excluded or privileged in the text? I could see using this strategy in more like a primary document like a government report, presidential speech, or press release. These questions specifically help students think about the purpose of a text and how things are written to further interests. I would love to use this strategy in a political campaign unit or analyzing a government's motives or cover-up. Another strategy I found that I absolutely loved as a language arts teacher is called switching, discussed by Kelly Molden in Critical Literacy, the right answer for reading in the classroom. In this strategy, the students switch around literary elements in a text to help discover bias and make the reader more aware of the author's intention. For example, the students could switch up the gender of the characters, tell the story in a different setting, body style switch, like fat to skinny or skinny to fat, language switch, clothing switch, or race ethnicity switch. Practicing this allows the student to think about the author's choice in the text and gets them to realize that an actual person is writing with real biases and assumptions, something we struggle to get all of our students, especially in 8th grade, to realize. In conclusion, knowledge is truly power. If we want our students to be responsible for the good of our society, defenders of justice and peace, and problem solvers in a 21st century world, critical literacy is a necessity in every school, every subject, and every classroom in our nation. I'm excited to start creating units for my students next year that incorporate the strategies and resources I've learned. Thanks for listening.